I went back in and welded this piece, added just that little line. There was just that little missing part. So that came out pretty good. Now we're going to put a band around the bezel, because this piece is going to need a little more beef in it in order to hold up to the design part. We'll start this piece with a piece of looks like about 20 gauge wire, and we're going to want to make a perimeter all the way around this. Now unfortunately the wire is so thick, well, not incredibly thick, but somewhat thick enough that it's not going to go around these bends very easily. So we really have to notch the wire. I've taken the wire and I've come in with a 4-sided or a square rat tail file. You can see the 4 sides. And basically what I'm going to do is just go ahead and file in a groove onto one of the surfaces. Pretty simple deal. And what that does, and you can see that the groove is about halfway through. I need to make it just a little bit more squared up. So the groove's about halfway through. If we take that with a pair of pliers and bend it, we're going to get a nice even bend. Whoops. See, good sharp bend. And that's what we're looking for in order to go around these corners, because they're pretty sharp corners. Huh? Okay, so we'll go on and file all 4 edges. Notice again that I've started in the middle here, because when the wire comes all the way around and butts up against this, we don't want it in a corner, because then it'll be an odd corner. So we want it in the middle of the run. The second mark is going to be a little more careful. You can see I've put a line with an ink pen in there, but I've had to do it a couple of times. And notice that really faint one there where I erased it earlier. This one's going to be just about right. If you'll notice, it lays in just a little bit beyond the line. We have to understand that half of this line is going to want to bend over here. So we'll get that right in between those two and we'll be set. Let's go ahead and start filing. All right, there's our second one. It's about halfway through. Let me do it just a little bit more. There we go. We should get a nice bend with that. Nice 90-degree bend. That comes from having the square tip file. So that goes on pretty smoothly. Looks like we're just a bit short, but you know, that can be played with later, so it shouldn't be a problem. Got the final groove cut. Now all we have to do is come in and bend that final 90, and we've got our pretty good square there. Let's see how it's going to fit. And it's a little bit tight, as we said earlier, but once we get it welded together, then we go in and file out the perimeter until it fits perfectly on the piece. Okay, we flux the junctions, and we're going to start with 2 very small pieces of solder here and drop them in on top. And I had one joint break on me, so I'm going to drop that in on top of that. And then we should just crank up the torch and see how it goes. In this case, the torch is gonna be a real light flame because we're dealing with a very small amount of material here, and we don't want to take it up too fast or too hot. And you can see that it pretty much just took. There's one, there's the other. Done deal. So everything's a little tighter than I want it to be. Notice how the frame isn't going down over the top of the bezel. So, but that's good, because what I want to do is I want to be able to remount that inside so we have a nice fit. So just take the the barrette file, which is a file on one side only and not on the other side, and hold the piece up in the air a little bit. Go in and file that inside. Do the ends. And in fact, maybe we'll get another kind of file for the ends. A little smaller one here. And I'm trying to get those corners down too at the same time. All right, let's see how that's going to fit. A little bit better. It looks like it's fitting fairly well on this side. This side is still a little tight. Okay, we got it to slide over the top, but notice that it doesn't want to slide all the way down. And that's okay, because at this point it's time to go ahead and file the bezel rather than file the frame. Let me get that off of there. Ugh, it's not coming off. All right, a little bit more pressure. There we go. Now we can come in and just trim up the bezel, and oftentimes that'll bring it right into where we need it to be. You can see that the bezel is starting to get a little bit of a sheen to it where it's been filed. All right, we got a fairly tight fit now. You can see it's down reasonably snug. And since we're working with gold, we don't want to use a lot of solder to fill in that gap there. So what I'm going to do is come in and flatten the frame in order to get it to fit nicely against the bottom of that bezel. So just basically take a file and do the old flat filing process. We've flat filed the bottom of this. You can see it's nice and flat there. Now we bring it in and go ahead and place it. Push it down, bring a file in and really kind of snug it down. And we can see that that junction line now has fairly well disappeared. I actually might want to take it down just a little bit further, because we really want this line to disappear, so that when I file this edge after it's welded, then it looks like one single piece of metal there, and so it gives it a nice thickness and a good body. Okay, we filed it down. You can see the edge now has a nice junction with the plate. So we'll take it over to the welding table and go ahead and weld this up and see how it comes out. Now this piece is going to take a substantial amount of solder, and notice that I've got one little extra chip laying there just in case I don't have enough. The last thing I want to do is go clip a piece of solder off at the last minute. So right now I'm just going in with the flame and just barely touching everything. Notice how the solder chips are dancing around. And that's because the flux hasn't dried fully yet. And I'm trying to get it to dry without the solder chips bouncing off the piece. In fact, this lower one has bounced off. But we're going to go ahead and finish getting everything all set up first. Okay, now we're pretty well in place. Let's put this solder chip back in place. Come on. And of course it doesn't want to go. All right, everybody's in place. Everybody's ready. Go ahead and just heat this thing up, and you'll watch the solder just flow right into all the little gaps. Let's see if we can get a nice heat going here. Since this is a fairly small piece, all the solder will take very reasonably quickly. Notice, there it goes, there it goes. Probably the other side can't really see over there so well. And I think we might actually have a completed project. Now I see one little gap right there at the bottom. Do you see it? Let's put that other chip of solder in there and see if we can get that to fill in. And that happens. Okay, bringing it up to temperature. See if that can fill in. Come on, baby. That doesn't look like it wants to. So, being gold, at this point, we have to cool it, put it in the acid, let it sit for a number of hours, and then re-weld it. While we're here, why don't we go ahead and pull out the other part of this piece. I welded up the two segments that were loose, and now we can pull it out and have a look and see if those actually welded, because they don't always looking for new ideas and new approaches. Last night I woke up in the middle of the night and I was laying there thinking, geez, wouldn't it be interesting to build a piece with a kind of a claw coming up over the top of the stone? So I think I want to start something like that here in the next day or two.